All right, everybody, welcome back to Top Story on RFX, where we take a look at some news headlines. We're going to be playing Titanfall 2 today, mostly because this is the only good game that I'm aware of. Every other game that I think is going to be good turns out to completely suck. The most recent game to fill that criteria was the formerly known Gods and Monsters, and now called Immortals Fenyx Rising. First of all, why would you change the name like that? That makes no freaking sense. There was a huge amount of hype about the game. Everybody knew about Gods and Monsters. Everybody was eager to have it come out. And then suddenly, Ubisoft, or however you pronounce their name, decided to change the name to Immortals Fenyx Rising, which is a ridiculously worse title than Gods and Monsters, and this accurately reflects how much the game sucks. All right, let's go to Google News, where we're going to look at our top headlines here. The first one here in the little top headline box, where you have several headlines from different publications, including CNN, Politico, USA Today, and the New York Times. The top headline here is aides speculate if Trump will travel to Mar-a-Lago for holidays and never return. You know, I don't know so much if that's aides speculating whether or not Trump will go to Mar-a-Lago and never return. I think that's the fantasies of everyone at CNN, that he will go to Mar-a-Lago, shut himself into a dark basement and never return, and then everything will be fine. I would like to show this clip from Battlestar Galactica. Now you're going to say, wow, that was a random transition. We just went from Donald Trump to Battlestar Galactica. There's this great scene where Lee Adama, I think in the final season or the next to final season, is giving testimony at the court of Dr. Gaius Baltar, who was the president of the... Well, you know what? I'm not going to give all the backstory on this. I'd like to play this quick clip right here, and then we'll talk about it.
This case is built on emotion, on anger, bitterness, vengeance, but most of all, it is built on shame. It's about the shame of what we did to ourselves back on that planet. And it's about the guilt of those of us who ran away. And we're trying to dump all that guilt and all that shame onto one man, and then flush him out the airlock and hope that that just gets rid of it all, so that we can live with ourselves. But that won't work. That won't work. That's not justice.
Okay, so what you just saw in there is him talking about the collective guilt of a society, and how what we want to do is you want to just put all of that anger and that resentment and all of that shame, and you want to put it all onto this one guy and then flush that guy out the airlock, and then as soon as he's gone, we can all feel better about ourselves. And in some ways, it would seem as though that's one of the main functions of any U.S. president anymore. He's the ultimate lightning rod upon which we thrust all of our problems and say, like, you know, all the problems that we have, whether in the country or with ourselves, is because of this guy. And we just got to if we get rid of him, then everything's better. And I think in some ways, Donald Trump is the Gaius Baltar of our generation. And Gaius Baltar is that guy you saw with the long hair and the beard right there. He's not a good guy. Like, Gaius Baltar is not an enviable guy in the show BSG. He's not. You do not like that character. Moving on, let's take a look at some of the other headlines we have here that are all in the top box here. It says, First Lady reveals new White House tennis pavilion. Then it says, Melania Trump cheers new White House tennis pavilion amid ongoing pandemic. The next one from USA Today says, Get ready to change the channel and stop giving Donald Trump the attention he craves. The next one from the New York Times is, as his term ends, Trump faces more questions on payments to his hotel. Now, if you were to read all of these top stories in the little top story box of Google News, I mean, it's very clear that Trump is a villain. Like, he's the villain. He is Gaius Baltar, and we just need to get rid of him, and then everything is going to be fine. And nobody wants to look at the much larger systemic issues that created Donald Trump in the first place, the reason why he got elected. No one wants to look at that, because that would be too painful. Here's the thing that's really tough about Donald Trump and Melania Trump. I don't like either of them. Donald Trump, I mean, he's quite clearly a con man. He's not a sincere guy. He flies around on a jet that's probably also made of gold. I mean, he's this kind of ridiculous guy. And then, of course, he has, a reality TV show like The Apprentice. I mean, these are not what I would call classy endeavors. This is not a classy man. This is a very he's a huckster. I mean, it's as simple as it put it. I mean, he's really not that much different than like the Kardashians or Paris Hilton or any of these like celebrities who are just famous because they're famous. And he's a product of a very shallow culture, and he reflects that shallow culture right back at us. And I think that's one of the reasons why people get so upset when they see him. The point is, he really is the Gaius Baltar of our age. All right, we've got another headline here from CBS News. It says, nuclear scientist killed by satellite-controlled machine gun that zoomed in on his face, Iran says. Jesus Christ. What the hell is... What? Okay, so this is referring to the, I think his name is Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. Probably not pronouncing that correctly. And this was the Iran's top nuclear scientist who was assassinated about a week ago. And that's what this piece is referring to here. It's talking about how he was apparently killed by a satellite-controlled machine gun that zoomed in on his face. I don't know enough about the situation with Iran's nuclear program. As far as I know, Iran has had a nuclear program for the past 600 years. And it never seems to produce a actual working nuclear weapon. And some political scientists would speculate that they're simply using the will they or won't they build this bomb as a tool of political leverage, within sort of the antagonistic relationship that they have with the U.S. and other European countries. And so there's another headline here from CNN about the Iranian nuclear scientist who died, and it says, as Iran molds retaliation for nuclear scientist's death, a riddle remains. What exactly was he working on? Well, I would assume it has something to do with nuclear weapons or nuclear something. I mean, if he was a nuclear scientist, I'm assuming he was working on some form of nuclear project. But, you're right, it is. It certainly is a riddle as to what he was working on. He could have been just building a seesaw. Okay, so the next headline here says, NASDAQ hits record high as big tech leads, energy stocks battered. That one right there, that kind of crystallizes what's going, like this, one of the many partisan divides that have occurred during the pandemic, right? There are those people who, as terrible as this sounds, at least from a financial perspective, benefit from the pandemic and the lockdowns, right? I mean, so when you work in a tech company, whether you're working at Amazon or Facebook or Google or any of them, they're all seeing their profits rise dramatically. Whereas, of course, if you have more of a brick and mortar business, if you're a department store or you own a small business like a restaurant or a bar or a salon or whatever else, you're getting absolutely creamed and destroyed. So often you'll see people who still have jobs, who are, let's say they're a commentator, let's say they're on CNN or MSNBC, or they're a writer at the New York Times or Washington Post, and they're saying, God, people, like, just wear the masks already, do the lockdowns, obey the orders, and then things will be fine. What's wrong with you people? But the people who are often lecturing that, the people who are saying that, they're the ones who still have jobs. They're the ones whose lives are not overall, their livelihoods are not being threatened. It's the people who are losing their businesses and losing their jobs who are out there protesting and saying, maybe I don't need to wear this mask and we shouldn't be doing these lockdowns, and maybe there's other things we could be doing instead of lockdowns, et cetera, et cetera. So it's often people who still have jobs, whose lives, or at least their livelihoods, are not so much affected by the COVID-19 crisis, lecturing people who are having their lives completely turned upside down because of the crisis. And it's almost like there's a complete lack of self-awareness of that's what you're doing. All right, we have another headline here from the Washington Post. It says, Trump administration rejects tougher soot standards. I mean, you really gotta be trying hard to paint Trump as the world's worst guy. Like, there's something funny about that piece. Trump administration rejects tougher soot standards. As if this is the scene I imagine happening in the Oval Office. You know, someone walks into the Oval Office, Trump is sitting at the desk, king of the world, and they put a piece of paper on his desk and they say, "Sir, the soot levels are getting pretty high, and here's this new measure to put tougher standards on the amount of soot that is released into the air." And Trump looks at the paper and says, "No, fuck that. I don't want that. No, I want more soot in the air. Yeah, you tell him. And get the fuck out of here." I swear to God, one of these days you're going to see a headline in the Washington Post that'll be pretty close to the top. Trump accidentally mistakes overweight woman for pregnant woman and asks her how far the baby's due. Or how far along the baby is. There's going to be headlines like that. It's coming. I promise you it's coming because they need people to click on this shit, and it's gross and weird and terrible. Let's see, we have another headline here from MSNBC. It says, "COVID is killing millions of Americans, and Mitch McConnell has blood on his hands." Well, first of all, almost every political leader has blood on his hands. Joe Biden, for example, voted for the Iraq War, and so did many other Democratic, politicians, senators and congresspeople. Anybody who's in a position where they're making decisions that affect millions and millions of people, and those decisions either end up being right or wrong, or maybe the least of all evils. So some people die so that maybe it's a smaller number of people die so that more people can live. But at the end of the day, I mean, no matter who you are, if you're a leader at some a top level leader, a politician or whatever, an official, you're gonna have blood on your hands, basically. I mean, who doesn't? In Washington, really. Now, look, I don't mean to defend Mitch McConnell. I don't like the guy. He looks like a fucking turtle. But saying he has blood on his hands, well, everybody in Washington has blood on their hands to some degree or another, right? I mean, they do. I mean, think about it. Think about whether it's the wars that they voted for. Maybe it was Libya, maybe Syria, maybe Iraq, maybe Afghanistan. I mean, every single one of these people, whether they voted yay or nay, I mean, to some degree or another, has blood on their hands. And that's a whole other topic. But just to give you an idea about who these people are, I'd like to just paint a little quick picture here. Imagine, you're just this regular person and you're driving down the street. And as happens sometimes when you're driving your car, you get momentarily distracted, even if it's just for a second. There's something on the radio, or maybe your kid is in the back seat and makes a sound and you look behind you, or any number of things could happen. These are things that we do every single day. And most of the time, 99.99% of the time, nothing happens. You get a little distracted, and then you get your eyes back on the road and you keep going and life continues without any glitch, right? But let's just say one day you get that momentarily second of distraction on the radio or your kid in the back seat, and right at that moment, a small child picks that particular moment to run out into the middle of the street chasing after a ball, and bam, that kid's dead. Your life is completely over. I mean, I don't know how most people, unless you're some kind of a sociopath, you're not going to be able to get over that. Now, it was it was an accident. It was definitely, you didn't intend to hurt the kid. You didn't intend to hurt anyone else. It was definitely an accident. But that's going to destroy you on a mental level. If you're in any way an empathetic person, it's just going to absolutely destroy you if that happens to you. And so in every single one of these wars, right, like if it's Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, in every single one of these wars, kids die. Lots of kids die. Dozens, hundreds, even thousands get bombed, they're collateral damage, they get shot accidentally. Lots and lots of kids die, to say nothing, of course, of all the adults who also die. And when you're a leader, when you're a politician, if you're a senator or a representative or, of course, a president, and you okay that bombing strike, if you vote in favor of that war where kids are going to die, you might take as many, no matter how much effort you put into reducing so-called collateral damage. In every single war that's ever been fought in human history, non-combatants get killed, and some of those non-combatants are going to be kids. This is guaranteed. absolutely guaranteed. If you start dropping 2,000-pound bombs on a city, no matter how precise they are, with a laser-guided, whatever, satellite system, some kid is gonna get his head blown off, okay? That's guaranteed. And you know that going into the vote. But you say, well, apparently it's more, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And I'm gonna go ahead and vote yes on this war, or this particular, or if you're a president, I'm gonna sign off on this, this bombing attack or drone strike or whatever else. That's something I'm willing to accept. And then you move on. And yet, as far as I can tell, most of these politicians, they seem to just go on with the rest of their lives, not completely shattered in the knowledge. Like, at some point, someone must have shown them a picture of, like, dead Iraqi kids, or dead Libyan kids, or dead Syrian kids. They must have seen that image somewhere, on Al Jazeera or somewhere. And they were like, wow, that's just the way it was. Yeah, it was a necessary sacrifice, and I'm gonna keep going and continue to campaign for my next election, and just moved right on. And now I don't know, maybe these things do keep them up at night, but I got to admit I don't get the impression that they do. And that tells you everything you need to know about the Mitch McConnells and the Joe Bidens and the Nancy Pelosi's and the Ted Cruz's and the George Bushes and even the Donald Trumps of the world. That's all you need to know about them. So on that happy note, we're going to sign off here. That's the end of today's top story. Good luck out there, and bye-bye.
Picking that pilot apart.